It's a cold dawn in the Normandy bocage, June 1944, and a 19-year-old kid from Des Moines, Iowa, named Private First Class Eddie Novak is crouched behind a low stone wall that's been there since Napoleon's day. His hands are shaking, not from fear yet, but from the sheer weight of the M1919 Browning machine gun he's just wrestled into place. The tripod is dug in, the water jacket is full, and the first belt of .30-06 is already fed through. Across the narrow field, barely 200 yards away, a company of battle-hardened German grenadiers is forming up for another counterattack. They've done this 3 times already this morning. Each time they come, they learn the same brutal lesson. That stone wall, that hedgerow, that quiet Iowa farm boy and his M1919 own this piece of France now, and they're not giving it back. The Germans don't shout curses anymore. They don't even look at the wall. They look for a way around it, because every veteran in the 4th Infantry Division knows the whisper that's already spreading through the Wehrmacht lines. When you hear that slow, steady, terrifying thud-thud-thud of an American M1919 in a fixed position, you are already too late. That sound becomes the nightmare of the German infantry for the rest of the war in Europe. It isn't the fastest machine gun in the world. It isn't the lightest. It isn't even new. The M1919 has been around since the last year of the First World War. But when American doughboys dig it in behind a hedgerow, a shattered wall, or a second-story window in a half-collapsed French village, it turns ordinary farm kids into something the Germans genuinely fear. Today you're going to discover exactly why the M1919 in defensive positions becomes one of the most respected and dreaded weapons the U.S. Army ever fields in the Second World War. The story starts long before Normandy, back when most of these boys are still seniors in high school, listening to swing records and worrying about who's taking who to prom. John Moses Browning, the genius who already gave America the 1911 pistol and the bar, designs the original water-cooled M1917 during the First World War. It's a beast, reliable as sunrise, but heavy. By the 1930s, the Army wants something lighter that keeps the same legendary durability. Browning takes his own design, switches to an air-cooled barrel with those distinctive holes, shortens the receiver, and creates the M1919. The Army loves it so much they put it everywhere. On tanks, on jeeps, on tripod mounts with infantry, even on aircraft early in the war. But it's when the infantry plants that tripod in the dirt and locks it down that the M1919 truly comes into its own. Imagine you're a young sergeant from Alabama, Sergeant Ray Mullins, 22 years old, leading a machine gun squad in the 29th Infantry Division. You land on Omaha Beach on D-Day +1. The beach is still a slaughterhouse, but your job isn't to attack anymore. It's to hold whatever blood-soaked piece of sand the assault waves have clawed out of German hands. You and your guys drag 2 M1919s up the shingle, find a wrecked landing craft for cover, and set up overlapping fields of fire. The tripod legs bite into the pebbles. You lay the gun so the beaten zone covers the only draw the Germans can use to bring reinforcements down to the waterline. Then you wait. The first counterattack comes at dusk. 2 companies of the 916th Grenadier Regiment, screaming, mortar shells walking ahead of them. You open up at 400 yards. The gun barely moves on that rock-steady tripod. The tracer rounds look like red-hot whips cracking across the beach. In 90 seconds the attack collapses. Bodies are piled so thick the follow-up waves literally have to climb over their own dead to reach you, and they decide it isn't worth it. Ray Mullins writes home that night on a scrap of paper, "Mama, I think we just saved the whole beach with 2 guns and a lot of praying." That's the magic the Germans can't figure out. Their own MG34 and MG42 are faster, much faster. The MG42 especially can spit out 1,200 rounds a minute, a sound so fast it's called Hitler's buzzsaw. On paper, it should shred any American position. But paper doesn't account for what happens when an American crew digs in an M1919 and refuses to move. The Browning doesn't fire as fast, only 500 to 600 rounds a minute, but it almost never jams. You can keep that gun singing for minutes at a time as long as somebody keeps feeding belts and pouring water on the barrel when it glows cherry red. German gunners have to change barrels every few hundred rounds on the MG42 or risk melting the gun. American gunners just keep shooting. And because the M1919 is on a tripod, Every burst lands exactly where the gunner wants it. No wild spraying, no climbing recoil. Just a steady, murderous hose of fire that walks across a field like the finger of God. By the time the hedgerow fighting starts in Normandy, entire German tactics shift because of these guns. Veteran Lancer learn to fear the hedgerows themselves. They know every corner where two fields meet probably hides an American machine gun nest. Oberleutnant Hans Becker, a company commander in the 352nd Division, writes in his diary after his third failed attack near St. Lo, "The Amos do not advance quickly, but once they stop, they become impossible. Their machine guns speak slowly, almost politely, and then half my platoon is gone." Picture this, it's July 11, 1944, outside the little village of La Madeleine. Private First Class Tony Vaca from Brooklyn is the assistant gunner on an M1919 team in the 2nd Infantry Division. Their platoon has taken a key orchard overlooking the road to St. Lo, and division orders are simple: hold at all costs. Tony's gun is set up in the corner of a sunken lane, camouflaged with apple branches and fresh dirt. The Germans throw everything at them that afternoon, 2 battalions supported by assault guns. Tony's job is to keep the ammo coming. Belt after belt, his fingers raw, he slams them into the feed tray while the gunner, Corporal Lewandowski, keeps up that steady, awful rhythm. The barrel jacket is boiling. Steam rises like a chimney. They pour canteen water over it between belts. At one point a German sticks his head up 30 yards away and shouts in perfect English, "You bastards, give up!" Lewandowski just traverses the gun a few inches and answers with a 5-second burst. The shouting stops. By nightfall the orchard is still American, and Tony Vaca has fired over 12,000 rounds through one gun without a single stoppage. He writes to his little sister back in Brooklyn, "Tell Ma the Italians in the old neighborhood were wrong. Turns out the quiet Polack kid from Greenpoint is the best shot in France." The Germans try everything to knock out these positions. Snipers, mortars, 88s, even flamethrower teams crawling through the hedges at night. But the M1919 crews learn fast. They dig the tripod legs deep, pile sandbags and logs around the gun, leave only a 6-inch slit to shoot through. They register exact ranges to every landmark during daylight. Telephone pole at 420 yards, dead cow at 280, broken cart at 150. When the attack comes at dawn or dusk, they don't even need to see the enemy clearly. They just crank the traversing wheel until the bubbles in the clinometer level, lock it, and open fire. Entire German companies disappear into those pre-registered killing zones before they ever spot the muzzle flash. Fast forward to December 1944, and the same guns that terrified the Wehrmacht in Normandy are waiting again in the Ardennes. The Battle of the Bulge catches many American units by surprise, but not the machine gunners who have spent months perfecting their craft. In the little Belgian town of Stavelot, 2 M1919s from the 526th Armored Infantry Battalion set up in second-floor windows covering the only bridge Kampfgruppe paper needs to continue his dash to the Meuse. Paper's SS Panzer Grenadiers attack 6 times in 2 days. Each time those 2 guns, fed by runners carrying ammo through cellars and back alleys, break the assault before it reaches the riverbank. German prisoners later say they believed an entire American battalion held the town because no 2 machine guns should be able to stop a regiment. Even in the Pacific, where the war is supposedly different, Marines and Army troops love the M1919 for the same reason. On Peleliu, on Okinawa, in 100 Forgotten Islands, Japanese bonsai charges run straight into tripod-mounted Brownings that turn jungle trails into slaughter pens. But it's in Europe, in those fixed defensive positions, where the gun earns its darkest reputation among German soldiers. By early 1945 the whisper has become a shout inside the shrinking Third Reich. If you see the long perforated barrel and the tripod, find another route, because the Amos behind it will not run out of ammunition, will not panic, and will not miss. In the ruins of the Colmar pocket in January, a captured German regimental commander is asked why his men surrendered so quickly once they were surrounded. He answers simply, "Your machine guns." In Russia we learned to fear the Russian machine guns because there were so many. Here we learned to fear the American ones because they never stop. And behind every one of those guns is a story like that of Private First Class Joseph Morelli from Pittsburgh. 19 years old, drafted right after high school, scared to death every single day. But when his platoon is cut off near the Siegfried Line and the Germans counterattack with 2 companies, Joe Morelli stays on his gun for 43 minutes straight. He fires so long the barrel warps and has to be replaced twice by runners who crawl forward under fire. When it's over, 187 German dead are counted in front of his position, and Joe is still alive, crying, shaking, but alive. He earns the Silver Star that day and spends the rest of his life refusing to talk about it because, he says, it wasn't brave. It was just what we had to do so the other boys could go home. That's the real secret the Germans never quite grasp. The M1919 isn't just a machine gun. In American hands, dug in, tripod steady, fed by kids who grew up hunting squirrels and dreaming of baseball, it becomes the physical embodiment of a promise. This far, and no further. Every hedgerow, every ruined farmhouse, every crossroads from Normandy to the Elbe has a story of some scared, brave American boy who locked that tripod down and decided the ground he stood on belonged to the United States Army until further notice. So the next time you hear that slow, deliberate thud 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 echoing across a French field in an old newsreel, remember it isn't just the sound of a .30 caliber bullet leaving a barrel. It's the sound of a generation of American kids telling the darkest empire the world has ever seen that the free world still has a vote, and it votes with a Browning M1919 that never, ever stops. And the Germans learned to listen. But the story doesn't end in the snows of 1945. Because even after Berlin falls, after the guns finally go quiet, those same M1919s go on to fight in places their original crews can't even pronounce, Korea, Vietnam, and beyond. Always carrying with them the memory of what a determined American behind a tripod can do when the world hangs in the balance. Yet nothing ever quite matches those 11 months from Normandy to the Elbe, when ordinary boys armed with an updated Great War machine gun convince an entire army that some pieces of ground simply are not for sale at any price. What would you have done if you'd been handed that tripod on some shell-torn morning in 1944? Knowing the next wave of gray uniforms cresting the hill is coming straight for you and the friends you've made since basic training. Would you have kept that trigger down, belt after belt, until the field in front of you belonged to freedom again? Those American boys did. And because they did, we're here to tell their story today.